There's been some amazing presentations over the last day and a half, starting with Christina yesterday morning. Feels like it was a week ago. and just now with Matt, right? In nonstop, guns a-blazing. And you folks bring some very polished, well-produced presentations, some slide materials, things that are very provocative, statistics, data, use cases. There are a wealth of information that you've been grooming over days and weeks. I'm very jealous of that because I do none of that. This is an awesome one day out of the year that I'll actually commit to this beast, but it's a lot of fun. So I get to mash up everything I heard yesterday and cram it into some slides that we'll have some fun with this afternoon, and then also try and update literally 3 minutes ago some things I'd heard in the last few sessions. So we are going to use Batman versus Superman because I'm thinking collaboration, right? What better story? The timing works. I think the movie comes out this week. 36 hours, 12 minutes until it opens my area. So yes, I can confirm. We've got a really interesting story, right? It's got it all. It's got this collaboration between these two if they're going to overcome the evil obstacle, the villainous Lex Luthor. But then there's tremendous conflict and there's obstacles that are in the way. And we don't even know the full story. What are these obstacles? It's been a bit of a mystery in the run-up. So we're going to use this to help guide the next 20 or 25 minutes of dialogue. I'm going to look to you guys for some active audience participation. Please do not be offended if you are not a comic book nerd. This is really about collaboration, the other CO word, but we use some of the fun, creative things that these two, as well as an appearance by some other characters in a really tightly wound summary. There's more than 50 things, guys. So hang on, and away we go. Right, and you guys are probably thinking along similar lines, like, how did Victor come up with connecting the dots? And we've been talking for 36 hours about collaboration, and now we're going to weave the story through the Batman versus Superman, which opens Friday. I'm doing a little content marketing for Warner Brothers. I looked that up earlier. I'm like, geez, this is probably some dollars that should be attached. So we'll start with Superman, aka Clark Kent, who has the noble profession of, right, yeah, he's a reporter, he's a journalist, right? So we have a few of those in the room, so we're well represented by Clark, and then we've got the billionaire Bruce Wayne, played by Ben Affleck. Bruce Wayne, the billionaire philanthropist. He's doing good across the community. He's righting some wrongs. For the purposes of this particular session, we'll describe him as Jeff Bezos, right? So he'll fill that role, right? And then finally we've got Jesse Eisenberg, who, if you don't know, plays Lex Luthor in the new Batman Superman flick. And of course we know Jesse from The Social Network, where he played. Very good. So Facebook is in the house. So we've got really important perspectives, things we've been mashing up for the good period of hours that we've been together, and thoughts that we carried with us into the evening last night. And so away we go. Before we go too much further, we need to give it up because, again, this takes a lot for us to come here and commit to leaving our home fronts and being a part of this conversation, but it's well worth it because of the well-oiled machine that our superheroes here at RJI commit to. Let's give them a round of applause. I don't know about you guys, but we tend to go to these events throughout the year, and the trains don't run on time like they do here, right? And in the way things flow and move, and the dialogue and the mix and blend of smart people, and we're learning things in some really dynamic ways, and it's because of these Caped Crusaders. So great job again, guys. You may not have noticed in the schedule, but there was a modification at some point between yesterday morning and to where we got to now. And this really does tell the tale, because a lot of what you all are doing is super heroic in nature. And so many impacts to the ins and outs of what we've discussed. And again, I hope that Some of those dots will be further connected, reaffirmed because of the pace of conversation. Sometimes we forget about something that we heard 12 hours earlier. So we're gonna brush through some of the high points and the key takeaways. This is just a little bit of background, just some context. I didn't wear my cape today, but I've hung my cape these days. I got to Banjo 6 months ago, Director of Awesome Things or Media Innovation or whatever we're calling it this week. Banjo, if you're not familiar, that's not what this session's about, but by background, you're trying to figure out, well, what is Banjo if you're not familiar? Event detection, social listening, it's really cool stuff. Let's talk about it offline or check it out, ban.jo. Very proud to be a part of the RJI family this past year in a very formal, profound way through the non-residential academic fellowship focused on wearable technology, really focused on the Apple Watch and implications for newsrooms and audience. I spent 12 years at CNN, mostly on the news editorial side, news gathering, and the last few years working for Turner in news innovation, laying out some roadmaps and strategy for where our storytelling was headed in the future. I, like many of you, are part of the alphabet soup of professional associations, and just so it's on the record, my favorite comic book character is Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, who will not be making an appearance in today's presentation, but I felt like I did need to acknowledge that at the very least. Technically, we've done a day and a half, but in typical over-the-top comic book fare, we're just going to exaggerate a little bit. We'll just say 2, because I couldn't find a 1.5 sign that one of my characters was throwing up. So again, as I said a few minutes ago, there's just so much to process. If you're like me, I go to these things and I'm thinking about things I've heard a week later or 2 weeks later. I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about, wow, that's what this person meant. And so the rush job for us to try and make some sense and figure out, how do I apply this back on the home front is a tall task. And so I think the idea behind how we organize some summary here, some wrap at the end to sort of bring it all together before you go on your merry way is a big part of that. So the mission for today, if you haven't figured it out by now, is to summarize, to sort of pull together key strands of information, synthesize, let's make sense of some of the things we heard, let's mash that up, galvanize, right? How do we carry that information back to our teams and apply it in a way that is real world right now impactful? And then finally, mobilize, right? Let's take action. Let's create action plans. Let's think about how we take something profound from a speaker this morning and something I heard last night over drinks, and then start to create some process around milestones and check in and create a roadmap to success. A lot going on with the IZE. You do not have to worry about this guy getting too angry, because this is actually a DC production, not Marvel. So we won't see the Hulk till like 2018. That's the next Avengers. So what have we learned, right? So let's bring it back. First and foremost, this guy's name is Kal-El, right? Again, I'm going to help you guys out. This is like Nerd Comic-Con 101 for those of you that are like really cool and have a life. So Kal-El, this is actually my face when I was watching Lewis's presentation yesterday, remote from St. Bart's, and he had the illustration up of the key to monetization, and we're trying to unlock the formula. That was actually the grimace that I was thinking, when did our business get so complicated, right? Holy crap. There was a lot of dials on that sucker. And I woke up once or twice in a cold sweat, perhaps thinking about those big dials and whether I know, I'm thinking my high school locker combinations and things. It got ugly. So we that's one of the running themes. This stuff is really challenging, and we're going to get into why that's the case. If you care to understand what some of the trending terms and topics have been throughout this conference, I just pulled this about an hour ago from TweetRoot. So you see Collaboration's listed about a dozen times. These are the more dominant things that have been shared through the RJI Collab hashtag. Kudos to everybody that's been involved, which has probably been every single one of you. It's been a very active and engaged day and a half. So when we talk about collaboration, it's important to understand the framework for which we are overlaying the intent of collaboration, right? If an outsider were to approach you and say, hey, Joe, how do you guys handle collaboration at your shop? How's that working out? What's working, what's not, right? The response has got to be in a very, default mechanism way. It depends what you're asking specifically, right? How we handle collaboration across our teams, within my own individual team, across the organization. We've talked quite a bit the last day and a half about across the industry and partnering with other outlets. And let us not forget about collaboration between ourselves and audience. So the range in which those four could be handled, those pathways and the principles and applications we use to achieve success and have some plans, hopefully, on being successful and maintaining a really high regard and capability in these arenas, it could differ, right? So we have to be specific in our thinking and our language and what our planning strategies are. Let's talk about Batman for a second, right? Can you think of a more profound, a more storied comic book character in the world of this arena that doesn't have a superpower? Anybody? Like that, to me, that's like the ultimate question. Anybody? Yeah, see, he's the coolest character who doesn't have a superpower. Maybe Tony Stark's, but that's another presentation. So what makes Batman so awesome? What is his strength? What does he possess? He does have money. Bruce Wayne, the billionaire, when he's not buying the Washington Post. But anybody looking at this picture, what makes Batman kick ass? Yeah, and what about his suit? His utility belt. It's his utility belt. Come on. As a journalist, we have these boring, stodgy backpacks and duffel bags and purses and things we carry our gear in. If we were really cool and confident, we would have an awesome utility belt, right? We have a different type of toolkit. And we've heard a lot about tools in the last day. We've heard some similar approaches and recommendations on what works to facilitate, to enable consistent, effective collaboration. Trello, I'm a big fan of Trello. I've heard it several times. So if you haven't dabbled, you want to, the key to these things in technology, in emerging tech, is to bite them off in small chunks, right? So we talk about Slack and Google Docs is a pretty universal technology, but things that maybe you and your teams are not familiar with, try not to sign all 300 of the organization up on Monday or whenever you get back into the office, right? Maybe you find a particular focus group or project team, and then you launch these things in small chunks and grow that organically. Slack, tremendous. Google Docs. Basecamp has been referenced a few times. We've heard on a number of occasions the importance of video interaction, whether it's Skype or FaceTime, for internal meetings, for collaboration, meeting with clients, with audience members, any participation that we can get out from under email and a linear phone call, and you can really up the ante around video. We want to go that approach. The tremendous tool, I'm really anxious to hear more about this innovation guiding software technology from Adobe Kickbox. Sounds terrific. Shoot, how did that get in there? You guys are on your own for the grappling hooks, but I highly recommend, particularly for you folks that are in the field. I thought this was so cool, right? Like, I was looking up the Hall of Justice, and just for kicks, I wanted a picture of Smith Hall, and I'm like, this is probably not an accident. You guys are good. You guys are really good. So let's reflect really quickly. We'll go fast. But I mean, why not? We're going to go into the annals of superhero kingdom, the Hall of Justice here at Mizzou. That's awesome. So again, Christina, amazing presentation, blown away. I thought what she had to say in terms of, well, many fronts, but the quad of content strategy, and she used the analogy, which I really liked, right? Without smart newsroom strategy, without strategy thought through, you're like a bear in the field waiting for fish to arrive. It ain't gonna happen, right? So, Kari, terrific. Crowdfunding breakthroughs. I thought we received a lot of insight. Going beyond the obvious around Kickstarter, right? There are a lot more options out there. Let's diversify where we're investing time and energy and in our resources. And so it's tremendous value there. Christina from Newsy, I love the way she described collaborating up, down ladder and this expansion movement that's alive and well. I can't believe Newsy's already 8 years old. Fantastic. And what they're doing compared to a few years ago, they're now covering global crisis. They're operating in new continents. They're opening up new offices. So very exciting, very inspiring to hear how they collaborate. Mark, tremendous in what's happening as they scale and support members of the IRE, NICAR organization. The information about listserv, I haven't thought about a listserv in years. And the fact that his folks are chomping at the bit for these lifelines, I'm very interested in hearing more. So value there. Equally inspired when Scott described the trials in traversing logistics of coverage, multi-platform coverage of Superstorm Sandy, and the really important emphasis around being organized about having your shit together, right? And to me, what I got out of that was collaboration is going to be optimized when you're removing many of the obstacles and many of those barriers that could bite you, which we've heard a few times over. And so for him, upfront, clear organization, communication was that much more important as everything started to fall apart in that part of the country, and real-time reporting became really invaluable. And then finally, look, Katie, all 9 things, I wanted my own Katie slide because all of them were terrific, and we'll talk about a couple more here. But wow, did that resonate? I think with everyone here. We can have collaboration on the ground floor and things are growing sporadically, but until we have that top buy-in at the executive level, it goes so much farther, folks. And I think in many regards we're preaching to the choir, but we are continuing on these ascents, and we need to keep this top of mind. So we'll move very quickly. I referenced Lewis's presentation. It blew my mind. We got a glimpse at the newsroom structure of the future for Forbes, and we talked about new roles. We heard about some new interactions with sales and tech and data. Fantastic. It was a very rich presentation. Alex not only had terrific insights, but my vote for Twitter handle of this gathering. I think that's a cool Twitter handle, so terrific insights there on that front. Bill, which again, we talked about this already a couple of times, but we have to keep talking about this stuff. We don't put a period on the end of the sentence and move on. And we want to say, we want to invite and keep channels open through technology and not create problems and ways and excuses for people to say no and move on. Kim, fantastic, shared how we're on the brink of a paradigm shift. We're about to enter in this new frontier of push-based. We've been utilizing the web for many years that's primarily pull-based. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't know quite what to expect from Andy's presentation just because of the subject matter. And as soon as he let it rip, I thought some of the parallels between e-commerce and what's happening in news with audience and what he is experiencing and has seen on the front lines of retail and mobile behavior, and we're subsequently seeing a lot of these similar behaviors, just fantastic. And we heard time and time again, empower your coalition of the willing. Find your coalition of the willing. And so Tim was spot on that. That might be the award for the top dog of the sort of mantra, because we've heard coalition of the willing many, many times over. So, If Jim wants a spring for t-shirts and we all get one before we leave, that's probably not a bad idea. I'm not going to go deep into all of these. You guys are here. I do love the term that Corey used 3 times by my count, drunken walk of the entrepreneur. I was dying to ask him for a glimpse inside the company refrigerator in the break room. But all of these folks, really smart insights, tremendous value. And that's what happens when you have a packed lineup of superstar speakers with great perspective guys. Nick was fantastic this morning on the immersive storytelling techniques. Sarah, she's up here and you feel like you're looking into the future. She's a crystal ball with arms and legs, and we get a glimpse into where things are going to be in the next few years. Chris and Jennifer and Carla, so fantastic. Really enjoyed some of these presentations. But from a lot of these smart interactions, there were some common themes, right? So experimentation, right? We heard that time and time again. Permission to experiment is essential. This was interesting. I think this really bodes well as we think about seeking permission and empowering our teams, but also audiences, right? And again, it's back to the framework of how we're overlaying the approaches and the principles of good, effective collaboration. We heard several times over how influential, how impactful your work environment can be, right? And optimizing that and thinking about who you can pull into these environments. It's not going to be super collaborative if it's you and another person most of the time. So we want to grow these things organically and in a very engaging, very authentic way. Hugely important. Spent a lot of time discussing which tools make sense. But we've also heard repeatedly, the story doesn't end with collaboration around smart tools. It's simply an enabler. It's simply a vehicle to further engaging our colleagues, our audience, others in the space around what good collaboration looks like. We know that there's no finish line with collaboration. We're constantly looking for means to improve. Could be part of the book club, and there's a new release that we're all going to rally around. It could be some new plans around how we refine our collaborative tools, our processes, the timelines in which we are going to communicate what's happening across teams, but it's a never-ending pursuit. And then finally, back to the main theme, collaboration's tough, harder than the Man of Steel's abs. So that means it's tough. So what are the key challenges, right? Where are we going with all this? AKA, what is the kryptonite? What are the things that get in our way? What are the things that provide a real weakness, a vulnerability that drain us, right? So real talk for 1 second, right? And that is, and I didn't hear this, so I'm going to interject on some points that I didn't hear a whole lot around. But what I wanted to articulate in this slide, thanks to Lex Luthor and the mean grimace, is that what we describe as collaboration, right? It's a real hot buzzword. It has been for a number of years. It's a very in thing to say around the office. We're doing all these exciting things around collaboration. We're bringing some new folks in, and we've got all these voices coming on, and we're going to do exciting projects that are built around dynamic collaboration. But the reality is, aren't we really, in some of those cases, overdoing it, and it's cooperation, right? Cooperation being the stuff that we have to do, right? If you have a weekly meeting with a partner at the organization and it's just part of what you do in your job and that's what the mandate is for the role you're in, I don't know that that's good, clean collaboration. And I think there are some fundamental differences. And so I don't want to sound dismissive because I think this group is fantastic. So you guys are probably all leaders in your organizations and are champions of collaboration. But I just want to be careful that we don't start flinging that word around the enterprise and everything is turned into collaboration because more than one person is getting together to accomplish something or talk about something. There are meetings, there are things that we have to do, and then there's the extra special stuff that really lends to the heart of innovation and building out new ideas. Collaborators are good, but I believe in the need for co-conspirators at time. And what I mean by that is there are some occasions, like spending a bunch of years at CNN and trying to be an instigator and a catalyst for like doing crazy new shit from time to time. It took a while for me to figure out, do I go big early with this idea and I create committees and pull in a bunch of different layers of bureaucracy and support and people that may or may not get behind it? And in some cases, that's important and that's the preferred method to get stuff done or at least moving down the path of progress. In other cases, there may be some opportunities where you just tag someone. Hey, sort of on the hush-hush, let's shape an idea. Let's get something moving. Let's see if there's something there, and then we'll roll it out to a larger group down the road, right? And it's not for me to say it's a all or nothing proposition. I just think we have to think about these things, and so we think about the model for success and what really works for you. If we think about why collaboration is so damn tough, I think we go back to the last 2 years of this symposium, right? So mobile first, mobile everywhere. The discussion was dominated that first year on what's happening with mobile trends. In the second year, last year, audience engagement. Both of those discussions in both of those areas are easily tracked through analytics. We can measure what success looks like. We can measure outputs. We can attach numbers to efforts. We know what success hopefully looks like and whether we've fallen short or we've achieved. Traffic, engagement, reach, brand visibility. There's so much overlapping between mobile and audience engagement. But the point is that there's a lot there from an analytical, from a data standpoint. But how do you adequately, effectively measure collaboration? That's tough, right? You can look at the outcomes, but that may not tell the whole story. What if some of the meetings and so-called collaboration, and you still reach the finish line, what if you reached your goal and it was in spite of, right? It wasn't because of those meetings, right? And furthermore, if there are 10 people attached to a project, and you guys reach the finish line, does it mean each person receives 1/10 of the accolade for contributing? Maybe not, maybe so. But how do you gauge that, right? And if someone shows up for a meeting, does that mean they've adequately collaborated? If they provided, some input on an idea, is that enough, right? The point is it's a big moving ball. It's a big moving target. So it's not easily quantifiable, and that's tough. That makes life in this regard a bit challenging. Can we all agree that we are no longer in the driver's seat when it comes to content creation, distribution, production? If we're lucky, we've been bumped over to ride shotgun. Some of us are actually stuffed in the trunk, right? But the point is the audience is in the driver's seat, right? They're hacking news. New behaviors are showing up all the time. We have new screens. We have new ways to connect with audiences. Audiences are building their own platforms. They have their own services, right? They've been creating their own channels for a long time out of frustration for not seeing things through the gatekeepers of the mainstream press, right? So we are no longer in the driver's seat. But we have an opportunity to embrace the loss of this control. One example, one of the things we started doing at CNN, and it's a tradition that I continue to carry forward at future outlets, is when we have meetings and we're talking about changes to programming. Katie probably remembers some of these things at the retreats and things we try and do off-site, big picture. We would take an idea. We would take an empty chair and we would put it in the front of the room, and then that chair represented our audience. So as conversations are taking place about, we need to do a new show on this, we need to ramp up coverage on that, we need to try some new experimentation with this, each of the executives or each of the stakeholders in that conversation took turns sitting in the chair representing the audience, right? It's an interesting perspective, and it keeps that relationship on honest ground. So this is one example. I'm throwing a bunch of stuff your guys' way with the help of the Batmobile, the Tumbler. Anybody recognize who this character is? Anyone? Man, no one's going to Comic-Con this year, are there? Yeah, you know who that is? No? You're just getting your buddy in trouble? This guy right here is Bizarro. This guy's Bizarro. This is important, right? Because there's Superman and then Bizarro. Bizarro lives on another planet, and he's the exact opposite of Superman. He's a villain. He has the exact opposite powers, right? He's a bad guy. But the point is, we have very much a Bizarro situation going on in the news media landscape. It's hard to tell who's doing what, in what nature, in what their future outlook looks like. So who is media? Who is technology? We've had a lot of discourse the last number of years on these big third-party technology providers that are doing content that are, we're becoming dependent on referral traffic as news outlets producing original content. We need them, right? Is LinkedIn, who I was at a conference last month, a Recode conference, and a guy named Dan Roth, some of you know Dan, executive editor at LinkedIn, he was describing the expansion of his editorial team. He oversees 20 editors placed around the world, and they're doing content, right? You can't tell me that LinkedIn's not in the editorial business. They're not in the content business. They're doing it every day. We know that Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of these big tech titans are hiring editorial folks, right? And on the flip side, BuzzFeed is building and licensing killer technology, data analytics packages, CMS programs, right? So don't tell me that they're just in the editorial business and they're doing a whole hell of a lot more than cat videos. They're actually building great technology. The lines are completely blurring. Slack has been hiring for editorial folks, and we've been talking about Slack. So the lines are blurred. It's Bizarro. Who's doing what? Everybody's hybrid. Content, technology, it's all coexisting, and it's the world we live in currently. We're in the home stretch, folks, so I appreciate your awesome patience. I hope this is providing a little bit of a recap and a little push forward. Last year I talked a bit about change management, and I think that's even more important that we start to close out the discussion here today on that. Change ain't easy. We've got change management. We've got the application of new structures. We saw the way new news models, new newsroom structures are evolving. We've talked quite a bit about culture, about communication, managing up, communication outward to peers, to our direct reports, and then we'll talk about cross-generational. Last year I made a very hollow promise that anybody who works in news for 5 years or more should get an honorary master's degree in change management. It's just par for the course. It's what is the nature of the beast. So hopefully Randy, Jim will sign off. I suggest this year everybody gets a Batmobile if you're eligible. But change management is what we are becoming very adept in. And then, we didn't spend a lot of time this week talking about collaborating with millennials and young people in the workplace. But this is uber important stuff, guys. I went from working in a newsroom where people were mostly my age, right? And now I work at a fast growth startup where everybody's 22, except for me and the CEO. And so they aren't going to adjust to Victor coming in and not being 22. The way they communicate, the way they like to receive feedback, the way they like to be involved in discussions and planning and assignments. The burden is on my shoulders. I need to adjust. And I'm excited to rise to that occasion. But the point is, different strokes for different generations, and we have to think about collaboration not being one size fits all. And I'm really good at it the last few years, and I've honed my skills, and so therefore I'm going to be great at it no matter what the circumstances. It doesn't work that way. And then one final takeaway for you guys. You've been so terrific. And that is, in the end, the team is stronger than each individual contributor. So we're talking about collaboration and making our environments as effective and optimized as possible, and creating awesome channels for communication and connecting with those that we're most interested in through technology and smart processes. But it's all about that team, folks. I leave you with a little love. At least Kal-El, Superman, is trying to offer up a nice hug. I love this cartoon. From Reddit, of course. This is my information, guys. If you want to share comic book stories, reviews of the movie on Friday, Or, yeah, if you want to talk about news media and collaboration, all that good stuff, happy to connect. Thank you guys so much for the time, and thank you guys.
Victor Hernandez from Banjo. We are not worthy of your knowledge. We are not worthy.